All right, team, let's take a look at production and what does it mean to actually run the installation. So this is the part that for a lot of people, they're like, yes, this is what we got to get into. How do we run the installation? Well, the reality is this. If the things were done at the time of the point of sale that should have been done, so there was the proposal was complete, the customer needs template was done, there was a production video that was done, and then that information was passed over to the production coordinator. If the design associate in the preparation phase, if the design associate put together a work order, and then the production coordinator through preparation and organization has had adequate communication with the installer, has had adequate communication with the customer, has ordered all the materials and has kitted everything up, and has now delivered the material to the job site. I think you'll probably agree that if all of that has been done in anticipation of the install day, the reality is that the install day is the easiest part of the whole thing. Getting ready for an install is far more important than the day of the install. Quite frankly, the day of the install, it really should be just a matter of the installer showing up at the house and installing the floor. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some tools that are available to you should you choose to use them. And I'll be honest, not a ton of franchisees use these, but if you find them useful, they're available to you. We'll talk about installation, and then we will get into what does it mean to manage installers, do your final walkthrough, and close the job. But for this module, for this session, we're going to focus our attention on the installation. So what about the installation? How do we make sure that we've got a smooth install day? And again, if we've skipped everything up until this point, well, then I can almost guarantee that your install day is going to be a nightmare. But if you've done the things at the point of sale, if you've done the things at the preparation, if you've got a work order, if you've gone through the work order with the installer and shown them the production video and shown them the information on the customer needs template, if you've given all that information to your installer, then the installation day should be smooth and everything should be sweet. So what does it look like to make customer installer introductions, to set some expectations? We've got a customer checklist that you may or may not choose to use. You've got an installation checklist that you may or may not choose to use. We've already talked about what communication flows look like, but I'll just remind you of those. What does it look like to be prepared for a disaster, right? And then maybe the most important point of the whole thing is what does it mean to brand your job site? So you worked really hard to land this job, but what does it mean to be able to leverage this job to pick up 4 or 5 more in the same neighborhood? So let's take a look at the customer checklist. This is a checklist which is available for you on floor 1-1. It is in the normal place under the production folder. It is a checklist that some franchisees choose to use, some choose not to use it. It's certainly not a mandatory thing. But this, if you choose to use it, would be completed at the beginning of day 1 of the install. So maybe there's a meeting between the customer and your office manager or production coordinator. Maybe they show up on the job site on day 1 to introduce the installer. It's shared with the installer, and essentially what this is just a way of setting a game plan together, right? So we've got obviously the name and address. What is the temperature and humidity? So RH is the humidity. So that's not so much the humidity in the air as it is in the wood or in the subfloor. What is the temperature? Do we have protective coverings in place? So do we have drapes or curtains or whatever covered up? Do we have sheets on top of the couches? Do we have drop cloths covering furniture? Do we know where we can put trash? Do we know where we can store material? Do we know where we can store tools? Especially if it's a multiple day job, right? If the installer is going to leave tools and leave material at the job site, and when we say job site, let's keep in mind it's inside somebody's home. Do we know where we can keep those tools that are going to be out of reach of small kids or in an area where it's safe to do so? What is the game plan? And again, if this is a 1-day job, maybe this form isn't as important, but for a multiple day job, it is important to be able to have a game plan with the customer and help them with some expectations. On day 1, we're going to get demo done and we expect to get this far. On day 2, we expect to get this far. On day 3, we expect to get this far. Now, I want to keep this fairly generic. I don't want to tie the installer down so that the customer says, well, you told me you would have these 3 rooms done by day 1 and they're not done yet. It's quite possible that the installer is still going to catch up time, but I do want to give the customer at least a generic game plan of what to expect. Product approval. So this would be, that the customer agrees that yes, the product that has shown up at the house is the product that they agreed to, the color, the style. They sign it. This says design associate. I would change this to say office manager or production coordinator. Everybody signs it. And this is a customer checklist that says that, yep, we're ready to move forward. The installation checklist, a little bit different. So this is something that I'm going to go through with the installer, or that your office manager, production coordinator is going to go through with the installer. It just defines what's going to happen on the job site, and it's just a simple checklist, right? So at the start of the install, we've got a game plan. We've informed the customer of the game plan. We've put a yard sign and door hangers out. We've taken before pictures. We've reviewed the installation guidelines. So these are the manufacturer's guidelines. We've documented temperature and moisture readings. We've verified the square footage against the product, the quantity, transition pieces, and everything. So this is basically just a checklist for your office manager or production coordinator to go through with the installer that says, do we have everything that we're supposed to have? During the install, have we taken pictures, like during the install pictures, right? Are we keeping the customer and the DA informed about progress? Are we protecting the customer's home? And is the area cleaned up on a daily basis? And then at the end of the install, and again, this is something that would be completed by typically it's the office manager or production coordinator. Are you taking after pictures? If there's any painting that was included, has that been completed? Is there any punch list that needs to be done? Now, maybe we switch the yard sign from the big metal heavy frame, install yard sign to a leave behind yard sign that we're going to leave there for several days. So again, this is another one of these checklists that it's not used by everyone, but for those franchisees that have decided that they want to have a checklist of things to do during the install, this is certainly a really, really good checklist. I will bounce out of the presentation for just a moment and show these two with you. So this is your production management systems. It's the same folder we've gone to before. And in here, you will see the install checklist and the customer checklist, which is right up here. So they're not side by side. This is my customer checklist, and this is the install checklist. And so those are absolutely available for you. All right, so back to our presentation here. So when we think about brand awareness, are the installers wearing branded clothing? Maybe you've got a magnet that you've had made for them to put on their vehicle. What about setting up your branded tent? Especially if it's summer and the sun is hot, those installers are going to really appreciate having an easy up that they can put their saws and they can put their tools outside. The work that they have to do outside, the cuts that they do outside. It's going to be really nice to have a shaded area. If it's raining, to have something to get in from out from under the rain. And there's nothing that stops you from using your branded tent for that. You might even decide to go get multiple branded tents so that you have your job sites really, really well branded. There should be yard signs on every job with branded communication, emails, thank you notes, and door hangers at and around job sites. It is, quite frankly, it's foolish not to brand just the ever-loving daylights out of your job sites. Everything about that job site should say Floor Coverings International. There should be no mistake by the neighbors around it that you're the one that's doing the job. So this tent is not great, but it's okay. It does have Floor Coverings International. I like the new branded tents better, but at least this is something. You've got a yard sign out in front. You've got door hangers out here. The installers are wearing the appropriate T-shirts. You might even have special door hangers that are set up. So here's a door hanger specifically about excusing our mess. You might even print some of these off and staple them to door hangers. There's a ton of different ways to do these, but these are absolutely necessary to make sure that you've got The neighbors around the house absolutely knows exactly who it is that's doing the job. You want them to be able to contact you. You absolutely want the neighbors that are around, anybody that happens to drive by, to know that it's Floor Coverings International that's doing this job. So again, all the resources that we've talked about are available for you on Floor 11. You can find them in the franchise owner's manual in the production management folder, or you can, when you download this, you can click this link and it'll take you right to it. Thank you for watching. In the next session, we'll talk about managing installers, properly manage them as 1099 employees. And I look forward to working with you then. Thank you.